Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the most thrilling, heart-stopping, and emotionally charged moments of your favorite daytime dramas. Today is a beautiful day to explore the dark and twisted shadows lurking just beneath the glamorous surface of Los Angeles. Grab a cup of coffee, settle into your favorite spot, and let us unpack a storyline that is about to change everything for the Forrester and Spencer families. The crashing waves of the Pacific Ocean usually provide a sense of profound peace, a rhythmic lullaby that washes away the anxieties of the world. For Electra Forrester, Bill Spencer's magnificent beach house was supposed to be exactly that, a sanctuary. It was a place to escape the suffocating walls of Forrester Creations, a place to hide from the relentless, obsessive protection of R.J. Forrester, and a place to process the overwhelming, life-altering secret she was carrying. The glass walls of the beach house reflected the pale moonlight, casting long, haunting shadows across the hardwood floors. Electra stood alone in the expansive living room, wrapped in a thick cardigan, staring out into the endless black water. She was physically isolated, but her mind was a chaotic storm of fear, love, and desperate uncertainty. She had retreated to this coastal fortress to find clarity, but instead, she found herself stepping into the most terrifying nightmare of her life. Unbeknownst to Electra, the sanctuary had already been breached. The creeping dread that had been slowly infecting the lives of those around her had finally arrived at her doorstep. Remy Price, the man who had been ruthlessly blackmailing Melissa Dillon and operating in the darkest corners of their lives, had pivoted his sinister focus. His obsession with Electra, previously a quiet and simmering delusion, had boiled over into a psychotic imperative. Remy had tracked her to the isolated beach house, moving with the silent, predatory grace of a hunter who had finally cornered his ultimate prize. He did not see himself as a monster. In his deeply fractured mind, he was a savior. He believed he was the only one who could rescue Electra from the toxic push and pull of Will Spencer and R.J. Forrester. As he stood on the wooden deck, watching her vulnerable silhouette through the glass, his delusion solidified into a terrifying resolve. The first sign that Electra was not alone was not a sound, but a sudden, bone-chilling drop in the room's temperature. A cold draft swept through the living space, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of the salty ocean air mixed with something harsh and metallic. Electra turned slowly, her heart beginning to hammer against her ribs. The sliding glass door, which she had meticulously locked, was standing wide open. The sheer curtains billowed like ghosts in the night breeze. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced her chest. She called out, her voice trembling, hoping against hope that it was just the wind, or perhaps Bill or Liam dropping by unannounced. But the silence that answered her was heavy, oppressive, and dripping with malicious intent. Out of the suffocating darkness of the hallway, a figure emerged. Remy Price stepped into the dim moonlight, his face a terrifying mask of calm calculation. Electra stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat as the reality of the situation crashed over her. She knew of Remy, knew of the unsettling aura he carried, but seeing him here, uninvited and radiating a quiet, lethal energy, paralyzed her. Remy did not rush her. He moved with agonizing slowness, savoring the raw terror blooming in her eyes. He spoke to her in a voice that was soft, almost soothing, which only amplified the horror of the moment. He told her that he had come to take her away, to bring her to a place where no one could hurt her, where the complications of her life would be stripped away until only the two of them remained. Electra's mind raced as she desperately scanned the room for a weapon, an exit, a phone, anything to break the terrifying spell he was casting. But Remy had anticipated her panic. He methodically backed her into the darkest corner of the room, cutting off every potential avenue of escape. The sheer physical dominance of his presence was overwhelming. The claustrophobia of the moment tightened around Electra's throat like a vice. She was trapped, entirely at the mercy of a man whose eyes held no trace of reason or empathy. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. He was not here to talk. He was not here to threaten. He was here to kidnap her. She was going to disappear into the night, and no one would know where she had gone. As her back hit the cold, unyielding plaster of the wall, the primal instinct of survival took over. It was not just her own life she was fighting for anymore. The secret she had been harboring, the tiny, fragile spark of life growing inside her, demanded protection. In a moment of absolute, unadulterated desperation, Electra shattered the silence. She screamed the truth, her voice tearing from her throat in a guttural plea. She confessed that she was pregnant, that she was carrying Will Spencer's child. The words hung in the air, heavy and desperate, a final, desperate gamble to appeal to whatever shred of humanity might still exist within a monster standing before her. Electra fell to her knees, the physical toll of her terror finally breaking her legs. She looked up at Remy, tears streaming down her face, her hands instinctively moving to protect her stomach. She begged him. She pleaded with a raw, agonizing vulnerability that would have broken the hardest of hearts. She asked him to look past his obsession, to think of the innocent life she was carrying, a baby that had done nothing wrong and deserved a chance to live. She offered him anything, money, silence, compliance, if only he would walk away and spare the unborn child. In that agonizing moment, Electra's love for Will and their baby eclipsed her fear, transforming her into a fiercely protective mother fighting against impossible odds. But Remy did not soften. The confession did not break his resolve. It broke the fragile fantasy he had constructed in his mind. As Electra pleaded for the life of Will's child, she watched the last vestiges of sanity drain from Remy's eyes. The calm, calculating demeanor vanished, replaced by a storm of psychotic rage. His pupils dilated, turning his eyes into bottomless pits of darkness. His jaw clenched, and a terrifying, twisted smile slowly stretched across his face. To Remy, the baby was not an innocent life to be spared. It was a contamination. It was the ultimate physical manifestation of Will Spencer's claim on the woman Remy believed belonged solely to him. The child was an obstacle, a blemish on the perfect future he had envisioned. Remy leaned down, his face mere inches from Electra's, his breath hot and ragged against her tear-stained cheek. He whispered his terrifying verdict, declaring that the baby was nothing more than a tragic mistake. His logic was twisted, a horrifying labyrinth of delusion where murder was equated with purification. He told her that the child had to be erased, that this supposed mistake needed to be scrubbed from her existence, so that she could be reborn completely and purely his. The absolute absence of empathy in his voice, the casual way he condemned an unborn child to death, sent a shockwave of profound horror through Electra's entire being. She realized then that her confession had not saved her. It had sealed her fate and the fate of her baby. Before Electra could scream again, before she could launch a desperate physical counterattack, Remy moved with terrifying speed. He produced a small, menacing syringe from his jacket, the needle glinting wickedly in the moonlight. Electra fought back. She thrashed, she kicked, she clawed at his arms with the frantic, explosive energy of a mother defending her young. But Remy was fueled by a manic, adrenaline-laced obsession. He overpowered her, pinning her to the floor with crushing weight. The struggle was brutal, silent, and desperately unequal. With a swift, practiced motion, Remy plunged the needle in her neck, depressing the plunger and sending the heavy, dark sedative flooding into her bloodstream. The effect was almost immediate. Electra's frantic struggles began to slow, her limbs growing impossibly heavy. The terrifying face of Remy Price began to blur, the edges of her vision darkening like a tunnel closing in on her. Panic fought against the chemical tide, pulling her under, but the sedative was too strong. In her final moments of consciousness, her thoughts did not linger on the monster above her. Her mind flew to Will. She thought of his smile, the warmth of his touch, and the future they were supposed to build together with their child. A silent, agonizing apology echoed in her fading mind. She was sorry she could not fight harder, sorry she could not protect their baby, sorry that she was leaving him behind in a world that was about to turn incredibly dark. With one last, shuddering breath, Electra surrendered to the darkness. Remy stood up, his chest heaving, his eyes fixed on the limp, unconscious body of the woman he had just claimed. He felt no remorse, only a twisted sense of triumph. He bent down, effortlessly scooping Electra into his arms. She was completely unresponsive, a rag doll in the grip of a madman. Remy carried her out through the open glass door, stepping off the wooden deck and into the cool, unforgiving night. The crashing waves of the Pacific Ocean swallowed the sound of his retreating footsteps, serving as a bleak soundtrack to the horrific crime. He loaded her into his waiting vehicle, securing her in the darkness, and drove away, erasing her presence from the sanctuary and leaving behind a chilling, empty silence. Miles away, tearing down the winding curves of the Pacific Coast Highway, while Spencer was fighting a battle of his own. His heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, driven by an overwhelming, inexplicable sense of urgency. The ongoing feud with R.J. Forrester, the manipulative narratives, the constant interference, none of it mattered anymore. Will had finally reached his breaking point. He needed to see Electra, needed to look into her eyes and remind her of the deep, unbreakable bond they shared. He was driving with reckless speed, fueled by a potent mixture of love and an intuition that was screaming at him that something was terribly wrong. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, silently praying that he was not too late to fix their shattered romance. The tires of Will's car screeched as he pulled into the gravel driveway of the beach house. He threw the car in a park and sprinted toward the front door, his pulse roaring in his ears. He burst through the entrance, calling Electra's name, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. But the house was entirely silent. The eerie, unnatural quiet settled over him like a heavy blanket. He moved frantically through the living room, his eyes scanning the space. He saw the open sliding glass door, the curtains billowing in the wind. He felt the unnatural chill in the air. The contrast between his desperate, hopeful arrival and the devastating reality of the empty house was a crushing blow to his soul. Then he heard it, a faint, muffled ringing coming from the floor near the corner of the room. Will walked slowly toward the sound, his breath catching in his throat. Lying on the hardwood floor, illuminated by the pale moonlight, was Electra's phone. The screen was glowing, displaying his own name as the caller. He had been trying to reach her during his frantic drive, and the phone had simply rung out into the empty room. Will fell to his knees, his hands trembling as he picked up the device. The realization of what this meant crashed over him with the devastating force of a tidal wave. Electra was gone. The woman he loved, the woman who was secretly carrying his child, had been taken from the one place she was supposed to be safe. The beach house, once a symbol of refuge and peace, had been transformed into a cold, empty crime scene. Will knelt on the floor, clutching the ringing phone to his chest, a primal scream of despair building in his throat. He was too late. The darkness had reached her before he could, and now the stakes had been raised from a simple romantic rivalry to a terrifying matter of life and death. The abduction of Electra Forrester by a deranged stalker is a catastrophic event that will send shockwaves through the very foundations of the Forrester and Spencer families. The battle lines are no longer drawn over corporate control or fashion lines. They're drawn in blood, desperation, and a frantic race to save an innocent woman and her unborn child from a monster who believes that erasure is the ultimate form of love. The nightmare has only just begun, and the